We are entering a new and dangerous phase of the 2024 election. I want to start with a clip of J.D. Vance where he went on TV and was asked about this ongoing controversy involving Springfield, Ohio.
Just once and for all, you again started this in part by saying that, at which Donald Trump repeated on the debate stage, that, and he didn't say anything about the policies that you're talking about. He just said Haitians are eating dogs and cats. Can you affirmatively say now that that is a rumor that has no basis with evidence?
Dana, the evidence is the firsthand account of my constituents who are telling me that this happened. And by the way, I've been trying to talk about the problems in Springfield for months, and the American media ignored it. There was a congressional hearing just last week of angel moms who lost children because Kamala Harris let criminal migrants into this country who then murdered their children. The American media totally ignored this stuff until Donald Trump and I started talking about cat memes. If I have to,
But it wasn't just a meme,
create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do, Dana, because you guys are completely letting Kamala Harris coast. You had one interview with her. You talk about pushing back against me, Dana. You didn't push back against the fact that she cast the deciding vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which is why a lot of Americans can't afford food and housing.
You just said that you're
creating
creating a story.
Public policy.
Sir, you just said that you're creating the story.
What's that, Dana?
You just said that this is a story that you created. So the eating dogs and cats thing is not accurate.
Dana, it comes from firsthand accounts from my constituents. I say that we're creating a story, meaning we're creating the American media focusing on it. I didn't create 20,000 illegal migrants coming into Springfield thanks to Kamala Harris's policies. Her policies did that, but yes, we created the actual focus that allowed the American media to talk about this story and the suffering caused by Kamala Harris's policy.
And so what Vance says here is, quote, "If I have to create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do." And what Vance is saying here is that he's got reports coming to his Senate office, but he admits that they're unverified, yet he continually repeats them. Reporters have tried to track down the origins of these rumors, and it seems like a lot of hearsay on social media. The bulk, if not every city leader that we could find in the city of Springfield, Ohio, says that these are unverified. Some of them have gone way further to say that they're false and that these rumors are actually causing major issues on the ground for the residents of Springfield, Ohio. I'll just read a few of those. This is Mayor Rob Rue, who told the Washington Post that Springfield is a community that needs help. It's frustrating when national politicians on the national stage mischaracterize what is actually going on and misrepresent our community. City manager Brian Heck released a video talking about the positive impact of immigration, saying, quote, "It's disappointing that some of the narratives surrounding our city have been skewed by misinformation circulating on social media and further amplified by the political rhetoric in the current highly charged presidential election cycle. The town has been flooded with people coming in, social media people, reporters, agitators. I briefly considered going down there to cover what was going on, but realized that this is counterproductive and disrespectful to the residents of the city. And this has been an ongoing debate, discussion, controversy. If you remember from the debate last week, this was a huge point of discussion. And among other claims that Trump made, he talked about a Haitian immigrant who, as Trump said, it murdered a child in Springfield, Ohio. And in a really moving clip, the father of that child, and this was a school bus accident caused by a Haitian immigrant, that father pleaded with politicians to stop exploiting his son's death. He said, quote, "This needs to stop now. They can vomit all the hate they want about illegal immigrants, the border crisis, and even untrue claims about fluffy pets being ravaged and eaten by community members. However, they're not allowed, nor have they ever been allowed, to mention Aiden Clark from Springfield, Ohio." I'll listen to them one more time to hear their apologies. Obviously, no apologies coming. Trump and Vance have been doubling down. And I'm going to point you in the direction of a few interesting pieces and takes about all of this. David Graham in The Atlantic wrote a piece called "Trump and Vance Are Actively Harming Springfield." The Ohio city is supposed to be the exact sort of place the MAGA movement cares about. And if you read that piece, you'll read something that you heard from the mayor or at least the city manager, which is Graham is making the case that actually immigration has actually helped a town that was really in many ways dying. But you don't actually have to believe that claim to have pretty strong feelings about what Trump and Vance are doing. You could actually believe that immigration is harming this country and that it's even harming that town if you have some experience or special knowledge about that town. But I'm of the opinion that what Trump and Vance are doing here with regards to this town is deeply cynical and extremely dangerous. And I think this is best evidenced by this clip of Trump being asked about the growing number of bomb threats in Springfield, Ohio. Let's go to this clip.
Do you denounce the bomb threats in Springfield, Ohio?
I don't know what happened with the bomb threats. I know that it's been taken over by illegal migrants, and that's a terrible thing that happened. Springfield was this beautiful town, and now they're going through hell. It's a sad thing. Not going to happen with me, I can tell you right now.
This seems like if you're going to be peddling these falsehoods, or at least, if I want to be kind, unverified accounts, that you should be up to date and know what's going on with these bomb threats. I'm fairly certain Trump must have known that these bomb threats were happening because as of this morning, there are 21 different facilities in Springfield, Ohio that have been placed on lockdown, evacuated, closed, or searched at some point. And there's this huge annual cultural fest that was canceled on Monday over security concerns. Obviously, it was after Trump's comment, but there were plenty of school closings and other closings before he made that comment. And this gets to what this project from Trump and Vance is all about and why it's really relevant. And I promise I'll get to the attempted assassination attempt over the weekend because I think it's part of this larger discussion. Bill Kristol in The Bulwark wrote a piece called Vance, Trump, and the Politics of Hate. And he talks about, well, what are the origins of this cynical strategy that we're seeing today? And he points us to a quote from 3 years ago from J.D. Vance, in which J.D. Vance confided to an interviewer, quote, "I think our people hate the right people." And I'll read here from Kristol's piece. By the right people, Vance meant liberal elites, and yet it was also clear that Vance knew one couldn't foster hatred for liberal elites without the collateral damage of hatred for immigrants, racial and ethnic minorities, cultural nonconformists, and any of the groups whom those elites were supposedly elevating at the expense of our people. But these past few weeks suggest that it wasn't merely collateral damage at all. The assault on these groups really was the point. Kristol went on to say, the assault on the Haitians of Springfield, Ohio is a kind of cultural, kind of culmination of Vance's and, of course, Trump's politics of hate. It also represents a culmination of Vance's and Trump's politics of lying. Vance acknowledged yesterday on CNN that he had been trying to manufacture a coverage of Springfield based on nothing more than a few unsubstantiated phone calls. Quote, "If I have to create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, that's what I'm going to do." End quote. The creation of stories, one could call that fiction or lies in service of justifying and encouraging hatred for a minority group. That seems familiar. It's familiar from the last century in Europe. It's also familiar from periods of American history, especially with respect to race and immigrants. Donald Trump is, of course, a master of deploying lies in service of hatred, but in Trump's case, the hatred is so mixed with his distinctive showmanship and conmanship that it's sometimes hard to see the heart of the enterprise. With Vance, who's not as much of a showman or conman, it's much clearer. And when we talk about conmen, right, there's this gentleman named Chris Rufo who works for the Manhattan Institute. And during the height of all of this, he tweeted, quote, "I'll provide a $5,000 bounty to anyone who could provide my team with hard, verifiable evidence that Haitian immigrants are eating cats in Springfield, Ohio. Deadline is Sunday. Go." So you've got this guy, and, the charitable explanation is he's saying hard, verifiable evidence, and how is that different from any other journalism? What's going on here is you've got the most senior figures, the former president of the United States and a sitting senator who are running for president, who are making claims before there's any hard evidence of those claims. And then he's got enablers going out there and trying to pay people to go out and find evidence of those claims. Now, of course, what's going to happen, which did happen, is that all sorts of things are going to spring up that are suspect at best. And we won't even go through those. But Rufo then started to tweet out photos that either weren't from Springfield, weren't cats, or at least weren't obviously cats or anything like that. And then people are chasing after these anecdotes. And in certain cases, people are elevating them and saying, see, like, this is the controversy. It's true. The liberal media got it wrong again. But what's going on here is that this cynicism is becoming apparent. And I'm fairly certain it's not going to work writ large, but it could work at instigating a lot of violence and hatred on the ground. And I think this was so appalling that Chris Rufo's own colleague at the Manhattan Institute, Bruce Riedel, tweeted the following. He said, now that the Haitian story has been confirmed as a racist hoax, don't expect its high-profile peddlers to spend 3 minutes in self-reflection. They don't care about the truth, and they've already moved on to inventing 5 more fake stories to demonize other vulnerable communities. My hatred of this garbage transcends partisan politics. I deplore liars, bullies, demagogues, and those in power who purposely endanger the safety of vulnerable communities for political gain. So that's his colleague. So this is a dangerous point that we're in right now, and we have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. And what I mean by this is we're in the middle of the closing days of a presidential election, and you have 2 very prominent leaders who should know better, who really need to be called to task for instigating violence on the ground, hatred, and racism that is so plain that no matter who you decide to vote for in this election, I think it's really important just to point to it, call it out, correct it, because if you don't, things could get really dangerous. There are kids who aren't going to school because of bomb threats. There are people who are unsafe in their communities because of this, and this is just the beginning. This is just a couple of days or weeks into this controversy. And of course, there was an assassination attempt on Trump's life over the weekend, which I think is a further reflection of how far things have gone here. There was a man with a rifle who was discovered near Trump's Mar-a-Lago golf course while the president was playing a round of golf on Sunday. Whoever this guy was, and as I'm recording this, we don't know everything about him, obviously should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And the Secret Service, again, has a lot of questions to answer here. The New York Times reported that the cell phone records show the suspect was in the woods near the golf course for roughly 12 hours before he was noticed, which raises all kinds of questions for the Secret Service, who is supposed to be fixing this. In reassuring news, President Biden and Vice President Harris both issued statements condemning the incident, and Trump was hustled away right after this incident, but wasted no time in getting his finance team to send out an email to its fundraising list with a button to make a donation with, quote, "My resolve is only stronger after another attempt on my life." Now, that alone, I think, is obscene, fundraising off of an attempted assassination attempt, right? And you could be listening to this and saying, well, he's entitled to do whatever he wants if he's the one being threatened. You can, that is a view, of course, but I don't think it excuses what Trump did next, which is today he tweeted out a long tweet. I'm sure he truthed it as well. And I'll read you part of this. He says, "The rhetoric lies as exemplified by the false statements made by Comrade Kamala Harris during the rigged and highly partisan ABC debate and all of the ridiculous lawsuits specifically designed to inflict damage on Joe's, then Kamala's political opponent, me, has taken politics in our country to a new level of hatred, abuse, and distrust. Because of this communist left rhetoric, the bullets are flying and will only get worse. Allowing millions of people from places unknown to invade and take over our country is an unpardonable sin. Our borders must be closed." And then he goes on and talks about terrorist borders, etc. And so, look, you're entitled to be traumatized by an attempt on your life. And a second attempt, you're entitled to be upset. You're entitled to be angry. But if you're running to be the leader of the free world, to be president of the United States again, the things that come out of your mouth, you are responsible for. And I think there was this point halfway through the RNC where Trump at the point seemed to be making a pivot towards unifying this country and de-escalating rhetoric and showing that he was perhaps a changed man. And he's thrown that out the window. And so when I say that we have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time, is that we need to be able to say, reform the Secret Service, hold them to account, beef up the security around Trump, prosecute to the full extent of the law anyone who attempts to take his life or anybody else's. But at the same time, hold him responsible for what he says including when he incites violence against people who don't have Secret Service protection, right? The kids who have to go to school in Springfield, Ohio, the people out there who are sending their kids to schools every day throughout this country and who believe in sensible gun control, or who just merely want the people in their communities, whether they're immigrants or people of color or anybody else who's a little bit different, to be safe and treated with some level of respect, right? Trump is responsible for what he says about those people. And merely because people try to attempt to take his life doesn't absolve him of the violence that he's instigating against those people. And another person who I think is deeply responsible for instigating violence here is the world's richest person, Elon Musk, who also happens to control one of the most important social media networks in the country. And he tweeted out the following. He said, "And no one is even trying to assassinate Biden, Kamala." And then he later deleted this, calling this a joke, right? And it's just, now, do I think Elon was trying to get somebody to assassinate Biden and Kamala? Absolutely not. But you're responsible for your language, right? You're responsible for that. Peter Baker from the New York Times said, quote, about Trump. He said he has long favored the language of violence in his political discourse, encouraging supporters to beat up hecklers, threatening to shoot looters and undocumented migrants, mocking a near-fatal attack on the husband of the Democratic House Speaker, and suggesting that a general he deemed disloyal be executed. And so my feeling about this is that I am glad Trump is okay, but there's something obscene about somebody who enjoys way more protections than we do, who is still unsafe because of the many problems of political, violent political rhetoric in this country, availability of guns. It's just an unsafe environment, even for somebody with all those protections. There's something obscene about that person instigating violence against people who don't have those protections. And finally, I'll just point you in the direction of one more piece here, which is from Anand Giridharadas, which is called The Rwanda Playbook in Springfield, Ohio. And it's a decently long read, so you can just read it on your own. But essentially, he draws parallels to this scapegoating that Vance and Trump are doing when it comes to the Haitian immigrants and others they deem their enemies, right? Who Vance openly says he's gleeful that his supporters hate, right? And Anand points to this history, Yugoslavia, where more than 100,000 were killed, Rwanda, where something like 660,000 people were murdered. And do I think that many people will be murdered here? I really hope not, right? And I don't think there's any special reason to think that we're on the cusp of anything like that. But would I be surprised if there was violence against Haitians around this country, if there were violence against immigrants generally in this country? Absolutely not. Because there's something like 40% of this country who really follow and believe in somebody who is so openly willing to lie to them about the intentions and the tendencies of members of their community. And that's dangerous. And so that's why I say that we're entering a dark and dangerous period of this political campaign. It seemed like for a second last week during the debate that we were in some kind of conventional campaign where it was about who made the right point, who didn't make the right point, who spoke more, what did the dial testing and the focus group say, right? That's what it felt like we were heading towards. But now it feels again a little bit like 2020, where you have somebody who is clinging to a losing campaign, somebody who's losing ground by the week, who clearly lost the debate last week, and who instead of doing what people tend to do, which is shoot for the middle, moderate your rhetoric, show people that you deserve their full faith and trust, showing that you respect 100% of this country, even if you only get 50.1% of the vote. Instead of doing any of that, which Trump sort of seemed to want to do halfway through the DNC speech or the RNC speech, he has decided to play to the worst tendencies of his base and to actually manipulate his base into being angry and threatened by the wrong people. And so I hope this cools down, but I'm worried that it won't. Stay safe out there and be careful where you get your information.